Okay. Okay. Fuck, I got a lot of code to clean up. Um, Not even counting the Lua, but especially with the way that I'm packing assets now, the build time is starting to grow pretty fast. Um, Major update as far as how assets are being packed now. I was thankful to discover um, a pretty cool way to do this. I'm giving my baby doll some ice cream. She deserves it. Plus, I want her to be chillax while I'm working. My usual ebb and flow is to work on stuff for a big chunk of the day, then shift gears, take care of all the IRL stuff, and then once I've kind of said, okay, we've done all the things, it's time to shut down for the evening, I take my melatonin, I turn on Redshift, but then I still have the opportunity to work a little bit because Gracie goes to bed pretty early, and so long as I usually get to bed before 2, I can wake up at a reasonable hour. But damn, it does take me a long time to get started. Working out aches and pains, trying to get my body into a comfortable state. Um, I actually don't need headphones on right now. So it's been a while since I've streamed, but I figure I would get on and clean up some code a bit. Um, yeah, so like the current build time, like as you can see, has exploded to over 2 seconds in a short time. So it was yesterday that I actually began implementing a means to convert my assets, like my images, from basically from images directly in the code. Um, Also, look at that. That's nice. Average build time is 6.666 seconds since September 12th. So in about a month, we've gone from here 90 less than a thousand lines of code and building in less than a quarter of a second to 3,000 lines of code and requiring 2 seconds to build. I'm almost wondering if it's worth it to have a dual asset loading system to keep the build time low, because damn, um, the conversion of the assets and actually wedging them into the build um, is a bit of a process too, right? And like for every image in my asset library, um, let's see. So like for instance, let's take tiles. So for every one of these images, there is now a corresponding .h file that contains the image data directly. So let's take dirt0 because this one's a rather small file. And I also am noticing that NeoVim is starting to significantly lag on larger files. This makes me wonder about the utility and the greatness of all of these different LSP plugins and whatnot if they're not going to be so performant. Just yet another good argument for me to get a new computer, right? I've been honestly looking at pre-builts, but okay. Where was I? Sorry. Baby doll needs some Wawa. And you probably see me get up and check on her every so often. Hi, get over here. Why are you all the way over there? Apologize for the low camera resolution. Let me show my baby off. Say hi, Grace. I love this girl. She's been with us for a long time, and we all hope that she's going to be here for as long as she wants. She was with me at the beginning of my career, um, doing web development for an island company, North Florida. They got bought out. They became a company in Jacksonville. I was largely doing like WordPress and Photoshop and Adobe Dreamweaver. Let me put this girl down. Grace, do you mind if I talk to people about my game for a little bit? Is that okay? All right. So, asset packing, right? So this is actually the tile for the dirt, right? Um, so raylib conveniently has a function that allows us to directly export an image as a .h file that can be then included into your game. So I wrote a little program here that can take an input image file, output the .h, and select whether or not to do dithering. So I actually do that now. So as you can see, you zoom in on the tile is dithered. So previously I was doing dithering on demand as we were reading in the image files, but because of the way that the images are stored in memory, we can't really like load and then dither on the data because the data is kind of static. It's literally declared as static in the actual tile data. So like static unsigned char, and I actually tried to remove this, but I got some weird kind of stuff going on whenever I tried to actually dither. I think the game crashed or something. So I decided, okay, I better not mess with this too much. But the export images code function actually, does a lot of this naming automatically based on the file name that you pass in. So it's kind of convenient so long as you like stick to this naming convention. So that solves one problem of like, okay, how do we actually get the image data into the game, right? And having access to these variables is nice too. So to actually like load this stuff in, how did I handle that? Let's see, data pack. Yeah, there we are. I want to rename this to data underscore pack. I'm kind of seeing the light on underscores lately. Let's see. You can see here, I created an array of something called an image data pack, and image data pack is just this, right? It's a struct containing a width, height, format, index, context, frames, and then data, right? So this is a good way for us to package the converted image code, like the image data array, right? And you have to know so you can pass in the width and height from the exported code, right? As well as the format. Format's needed for actually loading it into raylib. Index refers to let's see. Oh, so this is the texture index that corresponds to, because this defines what slot in the texture info array that this texture gets read into. I haven't gotten a good solution for where we need to actually define the number of contexts and the number of frames, but here they are. We can just kind of like shove them in. But I would prefer to have a solution where we don't need to do this, but at the moment, there's no real easy way to chop the images up without knowing how many frames or how many like animation contexts you're working with. Um, I don't necessarily know that I'm going to even have animated tiles, but we might at some point. Um, but as it is, the way that tiles are rendered is basically like lower, it's like one step lower than how the sprites are rendered, right? Ew. Oh, it's doing that on its own because of C-lang format. Okay, that's fine, whatever. Normally, like, it'd be like this. So at the moment, we're only packing up the tile, but we're also packing up the human animation stuff, right? So remember that, like, for each humanoid, we're gonna, and we may later have more context. It's like at some point we're gonna have to get the block animation in, right? Um, so idle shadow, walk shadow, attack shadow, jump shadow, spin die shadow, soul die shadow. And we can wire up a test function to increment the animation context so that, like, because at the moment what happens is we directly hard code like the switch to the walking. um right here. So after you press a direction on the keyboard, um depending on which direction you're heading in, depends on which context gets set. So in other words, like, there's no intrinsic value to the part of the hero texture that indicates that it's the up texture, other than just where on the sprite sheet it happens to sit, right? So and you have to know ahead of time what order your sprites are presented in, but you can directly map this position to some sort of like integer value. And the reason that we have this check for what the previous context was is because that determines what a new context will be. So like if you were previously facing up right and you press up left, then we want to, like, depending on the previous context, um your position might change, right? So like if you press right and you were previously facing right down or left down, then you're now going to be facing right down. But if you were previously facing right up, then you're going to be still facing right up. And if you press anything else, you're going to be facing right up. So like, because there's two different right contexts for the animation, because the format the dude gave them in is actually up left, up right, down left. And the down right animation context looks correct for how you would expect the sprite to move if you press just like right on the keyboard. So that's why I created this system, is that I realized that even though they're given to us in a different like organization, we can still use the sprites in the way that we intend without having to like create a direct one-to-one mapping, so much as mapping each sprite to a number of different positions. So I kind of had to work backwards there. It was like trying to figure out how to make the sprites work in this context. So so when you're moving, we directly like hard set the current, but we could very easily wire that to cycle the animations. So what function do I have available for this? Not animation increase. So incur. So this increments the current, which is the current context, right? So it's actually not the context, it's the animation current. Like which animation in the group, because each animation has these different contexts. So it's not the best looking code, but it works. Could be a better way to do that. So back to how we're actually loading in these data packs, but first let's start switching animations. So sprite group incur hero group. So to get the hero group, we first have to get the hero ID. So now that we have the hero ID, we can actually get the sprite group. We don't want to call this G, we want to call it like GRP. Because that name conflicts with the game state that we pass in. I was very careful building this thing from the ground up in a way that, like, even though we keep track of the game state as a global variable, that we're not using it as a global variable in our functions. We're using it as a variable that gets passed in. And the reason I did that is because there might be situations, or there might have been situations before I switched to Lua, where you might want to start exporting some of this code, the code that doesn't like rely on raylib anyway, or perhaps even code that uses raylib, to external files for better organization and management, and also ultimately faster builds. Yo, DK, what's up, man? Check it out. I want to do VR in the future, but that's not going to come until like way down the line when I start fucking around with 3D more. At the moment, this game will be playable on web and mobile, as well as offer binaries for local play. Quest 3, nice. I was looking at Quest 2 earlier because I figured maybe we can get one on discount soon. We got one on discount like a year ago or 2 years ago. They we have like one kid here who plays it like all the time whenever they're over. But other than that, um, my biggest, I mean, yeah, naturally they would make you pay for like games through their store, right? But if I can find a way to wire a keyboard, then actually, it would be really cool to test to see if my game works in the Quest browser and see if I can actually like interact with it. That would be kind of cool. Um, yeah, that's about right. I'm not sure what the three offers over the two, but I would get one of those again just to play Beat Saber on my own device all the time. To be honest, it's a good workout. It's a fun game, and I'm sure I could figure out a way to stream it. Um, I'm on Linux, but where there's a will, there's a way. Better optics and faster internals, nice. Um, it's an interesting experience. Like as someone who wears glasses, I'm glad that I'm able to play something like Beat Saber without any real issues. Um, and I know there's like so many other good games out there that I could be playing too. Besides just that, it's the only one I really care about or have cared about. Um, but the idea of putting contacts into my eyes just fucking bores me. I can already barely do eye drops. Uh, I've just got like those fucking crazy reflexes, and I hate things touching my eyes. Um, I knew a guy in high school who wore contacts because he had like really bad vision, and he hated like the glasses that he had to wear. He just didn't have a good style though. That's all. He later got one. Um, it just seemed like, and not to mention having to like fucking do the put them in the solution every night, and then like take the old ones out of your eyes and put the new ones in. That just sounds fucking awful. Yeah, you can't feel them, but then they like wake up, and you forget to take them out, and your eyes dry shut, and now they're fucking glued to your eyeballs, dude. Like shit's crazy. I don't fuck with that. Um, Not to mention, I just like how glasses look. I'm way overdue for a new pair myself, but from an aesthetic perspective, on men and women, um, I'm a fan. As you can see, there's really not a whole lot to the game, but I've been talking about stuff I've done since last time and what I'd like to do today. Um, the way that we're reading in images now is kind of crazy. We're doing it in .h files. Like, it's a good example. Because you're not doing anything physical. Yeah, I imagine in a sports environment, like in a serious track and field, um, they're fine if you're just working out. But I can imagine in a environment where you might be taking dives, or your body's flying all over the place. Um, and even then, uh, that's what they got those wraparounds for. Um, so like for instance, dirt data, right? So that corresponds to the tile dirt 0 right here, and So remember that they take this format and we define it right here. So the variables that I'm passing in, the width, the height, the format, and the dirt data are all being pulled from the generated file. We have to hard code in the intended texture key, the number of frames, and the number of contexts, or rather, number of contexts, number of frames. But that's the only thing that we have to like define ourselves. And if we're careful about it, we could do this in a way where we could have another kind of glue layer where we have an array indexed by the texture key and then pass, just like pass in the frames and context that way. But we still have to plug these numbers in. We don't really have a way to automatically or automagically compute the number of frames and the number of contexts. We could do that, perhaps. Let me think. No, we have no way to do that because in addition to this, there's another variable that I'm hard coding in elsewhere that I'm going to have to pass into this information as well to make things like clean. And that's the sprite padding, like the transparency padding, because like as an example of this, I'm not doing it anymore, but the original way that I was drawing the debug rectangle around the sprite, it actually draws the real rectangle around the sprite, which includes all of the blank transparent space surrounding the sprite. If you know ahead of time what that padding is, then you can properly draw the rectangle around the sprite. So as an example of that, like let's zoom in and hit D. Now we're actually properly doing that. But the old way doesn't take that into account. I could actually edit this code live to demonstrate this. So like when we libgame draw game placing, draw entities out Lua. I need a way to like jump to functions whenever I see them called, or like jump to their definitions. Something I can do in fewer keystrokes and actually typing the function name out. Jesus. So libgame draw entity, right? So if the debug panel's on, we do all of this, but so the and what's weird is this is or no. So like if we set these to 0, watch this. So let's set up our build loop. So now when I save this, it's going to recompile and rerun. And now if I draw the debug, you see that it actually shows all of the white space surrounding the player. And I could even draw a 2 to like demonstrate this further. So instead of making this a const, we'll use these same values. So actually, so redefinition, it doesn't like this. I guess what I should do instead, and actually we'll make the color something different too. We'll make it blue. So now you can see the difference between where the actual sprite is in the sprite sheet and where the padding actually is. So, and you notice how you can see the sprite like pop like 1 pixel above the blue line. That was the whole reason that I reasoned about why the paddings are in the files to begin with. And actually the build size is significant enough that I've even considered like zipping the image data before we actually like import it into the game, because but at the same time it might significantly increase the time it takes to like start the game if we have to like go through and unzip all of this stuff. So these are things I'm taking into consideration, right? So I'm leaving these commented out because at some point we're gonna have to come back and actually like put them back in. Um, draw entities at is a loop that goes through each of the entities at a certain tile location and draws them. Um, and the reason we do this is because we might have a situation where we have multiple entities, like an item standing on a tile, like multiple items on a tile, right? Um, Mechanically, I'm not really going to allow for two entities to be on the same tile at the same time. Um, we're not going Disgaea with this, you know what I mean? Similarly, like if there's a Sokoban style, not tile, but like a Sokoban style stone that's on top of a tile, then the player should not like be able to stand on top of that tile at the same time. So I think that makes sense. Eventually, we're going to get back to lighting once we're placing torches back on the tiles. The way the company and the tile scenes are drawn right now is kind of silly, but I'm also going to be moving a lot of stuff into Lua, or at least like the text management. All the drawing is still being done in C, but there is like a glue layer between like the Lua game state and what actually is drawn on the screen, you know, like trying to make it as one-to-one as possible. So that way is like at a certain point all of the drawing code will be like mostly set and only will need to be extended for like new entities and stuff, but we're building a system here. Like the way that we're creating sprite groups, like really ugly. It's like we could, if we knew the number of hero keys ahead of time, pass that in and create a new sprite group and then instantiate the keys. But we would have to have these keys somewhere, kind of like packed up the same way that we're doing the image data packs at the moment. So we could have hero keys defined somewhere and then a function, because this is the same for everything. This is like once we've created the sprite group, we have to go through each texture that belongs to that sprite group, and this is how we associate them. This is a sprite, this is a sprite, this is a sprite. But they're also textures. So we grab the index for the next texture, the number of contexts, number of frames, and that's passed into sprite create, which appropriately slices up the texture in a way that, given the context and which frame of animation we're on, can keep track of like where in the texture we're currently drawing. So another thing that we need to, get rid of is this hard coding right here, because this is not going to extend to drawing things that might be bigger than 8x8, or anything else that might not have like the same level of padding or might not have any padding. Um, so we're gonna have to find a way to associate the offset as well as the texture keys with a particular entity that we're creating. Because actually create the hero, two things happens. First we call create hero, right? Which calls create entity, which creates a brand new entity of type player. So if we keep track of the entity type, then we might be able to generalize how the sprite group's created. The sprite group is dependent upon what the entity type is. At the moment, we've got a player NPC item and count. So it won't actually be by the entity type. And actually, which sprite group we need to select for particular entities also going to be more of a function of both. I mean, so like if it's a player or it's an NPC, then we haven't done so yet because I kind of backtracked on implementing this stuff for a moment. But the any PC or NPC has a race, and this is for those entity types the selecting factor on which sprite group we're actually going to load. I'm just thinking this out loud right now. I'm not doing all of this right now. In fact, in a little bit after I work for a while, I'm going to go take care of some car stuff. And then either cook something or pick something up to eat. Chillax for a bit. Because the theory of coding I did over the last week or so implementing the Lua stuff, it's like, yeah, this is very typical of me to rabbit hole down innocuous details that don't necessarily like push me forward towards completing something. But at the end of the day, what I want by doing this is to smooth out the bottom layer in a way that I can feel confident that this is bedrock, that this is the ground floor of where things should be, and that we can build from here. It's like, for instance, the way we create the orc. Down here, it's similar. We're hard coding in the creation of the sprite group. We want this to be more general before we start like adding in a whole bunch of stuff. Because this works for what we want at the moment, but it can work better. So let's think about attaching race, seeing if we can't like wire up sprite group creation for PCs and NPCs. based off of race. At some point, I got to go through this Lua and start organizing it, moving stuff to new files and whatnot. Um, See, for a lot of these functions, I'm calling it global game state, but I really need to be writing these functions in a way that accepts the game state as a parameter, kind of like I'm doing in C. And what that would allow for me to do is start moving some of these functions into other files. That way I can kind of like keep things really organized, because at the moment this file is getting big. It's literally just a script. Not to mention I have to work on the serialization and deserialization of tables in order to import and export the game state from Lua, so that during the hot reload process, we don't accidentally keep resetting the game, because that kind of defeats half the purpose. Which, in the best case, we can actually write Lua as well. Well, see, yeah, because the scripts are going to get reloaded on the hot reload anyway, right? So on hot reload, we would want to pull back in a string representing the game state, so that everything gets reinitialized and we can have the game like left. It's basically how like save and load game would work. We would just be using them in the context of development. So create entity. Yeah, we don't have a race type attached yet, right? We'll just start with those two, because that's all the assets that I have in the game at the moment. Now when we go to create entity, by default, unless we decide to pass in the race, which actually, and I think about it, because sometimes an entity might not have a race because it's not a PC or an NPC. So we do need none equals 0. But let's try to do things the Lua way, right? Let's try to do things in a way that doesn't cause us to constantly have to deal with this off by one issue. Let's do things the Lua way. So now, by default, race types will be none. So we're no longer going to have a complex race. I think if we start the index that way, then it properly enumerates. So after the hero is created, right? So this creates the entity in Lua, attaches it to the entities table, also puts it at the correct location in the game. Is we insert it to the entities table, and then we add it to a tile as well, just the ID. Because whenever it's like there's a table of entities, right? And then there's also the table of representing the dungeon floor. Each one has a tile, and each tile has a list of entities on it. A lot of them will be empty, but whenever an entity moves into a tile, it effectively moves into this array that sits on the tile, or rather its ID does. The actual entity information sits off in the entities table, but this way is a very quick way to like reference like where something should be at. One of the big takeaways that I've gotten from entity component systems is how effective it is to use an entity ID as an index into different data structures so that you can separate out like where things are actually stored. It's very useful. Oh yeah. I have to take more medicine. All right. That's enough coffee for now. Switch to water. Let's see. It's pretty good so far. So we'd set the race on the player, and then like let's take a look at create hero sprite group. And how this can be generalized. Create sprite group. So I'm thinking texture keys, right? If we can associate something like tx hero with this whole array, then we can kind of eliminate the hard coding of the keys here. Hmm. No, this is gonna be in libgame defines. Because then now we can just pass a pointer to the keys array and pass in the count, right? Check this out. Okay, so now we're using keys and num keys, right? So here we could do num keys. The x key equals keys of I. Let's see how much we have to change here, if anything. Still calling it hero group. Okay, so far this feels better, but let's try calling this function with our new with call our new function instead. Oh wow, no, we don't want to pass a pointer like that. Christ. Um, wow, Copilot, that was stupid. Um, oh, it's probably because we're not including the new tx keys file. No, it's tx hero key count. Um, wait, offset x, offset y. Let's see. Unused variable 1918. Okay. Built. And loads fine. So we've effectively replaced an old function that was hard coding a lot with something that's not hard coded. So now when we go to create the other sprite groups, we'll be able to use this one function and as well as get rid of all these old functions. So this is a pretty good win. Create sprite group. See, create orcs sprite group is commented out at the moment. as is shield sprite group, and sword. Okay, this is not bad. Uh-oh. 2218. Oh yeah, so we're not creating the orc at the moment, but we will be soon. Um, oh yeah, so because we got rid of that race stuff in entity, but I don't even think we're using entity anymore. Oh yeah. We're no longer using that, so we can start whittling out some of the things from game state that we're no longer using. Oh, nice. Uh, let's see. libgame.c 1678. Yeah. And we're back. Everything still works. We should probably do a check-in before I continue going crazy. Let's see what all I've done so far. I don't think we're passing in race to create sprite group yet, right? Maybe we should select which keys array and what num keys and what offset based off the race type. So then we'd be able to create sprite group by race. Or even by ID. So doing it simply by ID, we're going to attempt to wrap this around create sprite group by pre-selecting the variables that we're going to feed into it. So here's how this will work. So we're just kind of wedging this together in a moment, but there's a way to glue this so that it's smoother. But ultimately, the end goal being, once we've created an entity, we shouldn't have to know all of these different values in order for it to automatically create the sprite groups. As an example of this, the way that we're currently calling the sprite group is like right here. So actually, entity type So we haven't done one for orcs yet, but this will be coming soon. So at some point we come back and do those. But after those variables are set, all right, so if this works, I'll be able to call this instead of hard coding in all those values at sprite creation. So let's try it. All right, so we want to try the new way, which is create sprite group by ID, which means we won't have to pass any of that shit in anymore. And everything should still work. And now we have a very generic way of creating sprites and associating them with their entities in the future. So that when I start to add in all of these new things, so long as I have the assets loaded in, the keys wired up, then this is all I have to call. So that takes some of the cognitive load out of like the process of actually creating a one-to-one between the entity and its associated sprite. And it still works. Perfect. This is exactly what we want. And I have to piss soon. I have to take my baby out to piss. The Roomba is bumping into my door and being distracting as fuck. So let's do a code check-in. All right. Let's do a BRB. And I'll put on some music for y'all.
Howdy, Internet. My internet blogging must have pissed somebody off, because I've been redesignated, like hitting the prison lotto, which I just walked in here last night. There's some dude, he's down like 22 years and he has 28 more to go, and he says, oh man, they sent you to one of the worst places that you could possibly go to. I think I liked it better in the maximum security facilities. Please send me back. Things are alright otherwise. I dropped into a deep fever. I've been denied access to both sunlight and food for an extended period, and I can go without one, but not both at the same time. And I had this dream while I was in this fever, as I walked to the apex of this mountain, and I look out on this blindingly bright area. Though it's bright, I know that it's nighttime, and the sun comes up, and the sun is black and shining rays of dark darkness upon this planet, and that the forest before me is violets and blues. And I look out beyond that, and there's a distant shore, and I know in my heart that though Pindar said, neither by land nor sea can anyone reach that shore and intend to me an ode, I am the first person within 70 years to get a good look at it. And as I do what I do in the sunlight, I stare into the sun. It's an ancient spiritual practice. Sun gazing. It actually won't hurt you. You can look directly into the sun for an extended period, and it will fill you with warmth. And I look into the sun, and its black rays invade my retinas, and they are fragmented, and they are encoded, and they drive into my pineal gland. And then something appears before me, a glyph, a raw power, and I know that this is my first move. We will see more. Woe unto my enemies when I finally reach a parsable grammar.
does it feel? Baby, oh baby, I love you so bad I would. How does it feel? Baby, oh baby, I love you so bad I would. How does it feel? Baby, oh baby, I love you so bad I would. Y'all don't even know that. 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 Y'all don't even know that.
quite a break, right? I don't know how much more I'm doing, but I said to Grace, hey, I kind of want to get the orcs back in before I call it a day. So now that we have this nice function, right? Create sprite group by ID. Like, we've got the files ready, but we have to establish a procedure for actually bringing them into the game. This gets some source code wired up, right? Process is going to be very similar. So whenever we have a new dude to put in, we're going to have to define these values. So that means we have to update libgamedefines. Because as you can see, we don't have the textures for the orc being pulled in or having a concrete value yet. We still have to find a way to make this whole process easier too. Because if every time we have to add a new entity or a new asset like this, and we have to hand define all this shit, it's gonna be a pain in the ass. All right, now let's think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So this one has one extra context over the over the other one. But because we're able to like hard define this here, we'll be able to break the data packs up by type so that like one file is not just littered with tons of hard macros like this. But okay, so it skipped charged attack. Uh-huh. Oh, that's because over in libgamedefines, they're not spin die. And we don't have a soul die either. So we would want to replace that with charged attack and charged attack shadow. One, two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Wait, we're missing one. Idle, walk, attack, charged attack. Oh, we're missing damage. So we actually don't have a soul die pack. But we do have charged attack. And then we have damage, which taking a look over in a sprite. Let's see. The damage is a 4x4 as well. so this needs to be 14 in order to account for those two extras. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 14. Oh, it's characters slash. Whoops. But just like with before, I'm going to rename charged attack. And then we have to update the variables in those files. Oops. That was like a envim inside an envim situation. And same thing here. All right, so so now this looks better. Oh yeah, nice. Defined but not used. See, I'm missing something. So you need to attach all of the orc packs to this list. Um, 14, 12, that's 26, 1, that's 27. Yeah, it's just orc die. So that's in the packs. So this needs to be 27. Looks good. You ever loaded that in? Oh. One, two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 13. Everything compiles. It still runs. So we should have access to creating an orc by an ID now. Let's walk through this, see if this makes sense. So once we create the orc entity in the Lua and we get its ID back, we set its race type beforehand, we will be able to simply call this function. So let's uncomment this stuff. Lots of initial error checking. But instead of doing this, see how laggy the the syntax update is now? What does the game look like at the moment? Good question. We got to do it on the screen, and I'm about to get some basic enemies in here again. It's been a significant re-engineering effort in order to do a couple things. One is that this now builds and runs in the web browser as well. And two is that underneath the hood, we're converting a lot over to a Lua internal state representation and management. I've had a lot of fun actually implementing this so far. It's really, really basic, but like everything is functional, works, runs at 60 FPS. At the moment, no crashes. Not that I haven't had crashes, but getting back to getting this orc in the game. We need to set the race. Come on, Copilot. Kind of nervous. So test enemy placement is how we are wrapping, creating the orc at the moment so that we can wire it to like a key press. Uh-oh. We're not drawing NPCs at the moment, that's why. So we gotta draw game placing, draw entities, NPC. All right, we got our dudes back. You can kind of see where this is going at this point, right? There's still a lot to do. However, this all works. Like we can really, you know, start to fill things up here. And see, even this I can get up and running in a web browser. But we've done some significant work on loading assets today. I've done some smoothing out of the process. So in the last couple weeks, I've not only gotten the game to run in a web browser, but I've also implemented a functional Lua interpreter underneath the hood that allows me to interchange requests between a internal Lua state and the external, game renderer that wraps it, right? And in addition to that, we also have asset packing so that the assets are not loaded off a disk. Instead, they are read directly from within values that are built into the binary itself, which is going to make it easier for me to distribute this thing. You don't want to necessarily like raw pack like image files with a game necessarily, unless you're okay with distributing assets in that fashion. One of the stipulations of using this wonderful mini fantasy set, I believe, is that you really aren't allowed to distribute the assets as like art assets for use in other things. It's part of the licensing agreement, but really good quality stuff. And yeah, so like we've got boxes drawing around everything, plus you can also see like where everything's padding is at, relatively speaking. So like it can go even further and draw the grid beneath it, right? So at one level, you've got the grid, which is, it's highlighting where all the tiles are at. But then at another level, we have boxes that we're drawing around not only the full sprite, including the padding, but also the actual sprites themselves. So like I'm trying to keep things very clean and efficient in terms of managing everything. Like it should really be building up primitives and being very careful to test everything along the way before you move on to the next step. So we added in the stuff for the orcs. We're testing enemy placement again. Everything moves and works. We'll probably be able to move this to like create entity NPC and then add a race type to it. So that way we can call like create NPC and pass in a race instead. Is then we'll be able to like start generating random enemies and be able to test out like having multiple enemies of different types up on the screen. Want to temporarily disable the fade and instead re-enable this demo randomization of dungeon tiles. So we're no longer using hero ID here, but rather as you can see, we're no longer managing it from we're no longer managing it from the C game state, but rather the Lua game state. And hopefully this should still work. So randomized dungeon tiles, right? What this does is it calls a Lua function. randomized dungeon tiles with 4 values, an x, a y, and a width and a height. That functions right here in Lua. So as a demo, like whenever I press the spacebar, this function's going to run. And actually, it's not going to do anything because we haven't read in all the other tiles. Ooh. That's fun. This would be a good checkpoint, though. I fear I've waited too long to go get my car stuff done, so I'll probably put that off for a while so I can code for a bit longer. So let's get those tiles back in there, huh? So if we wanted to include all the other tiles, CTX dirt, so actually, they have to be like that. So we got 3 types of dirt, 14 types of stone, no, there we go, stone wall, oh wait, stone wall's all one word. Oh wait, so we want to do dirt 1, dirt 2, all right, there's our tiles. This is one of the most useful things Copilot can do. Is actually get math correct. Probably because of the large files I have open. Let's see if it was that easy. Wait. Okay, it's texture tile. What do you mean never used? Oh, we're never reading them in yet. Three plus 13 or 14 plus 1. Oops. As long as you kind of feed Copilot at the beginning, it can figure out the rest. what is that? 26, 36, 40, 44. Should be 45. Oh wait, no, we already read in dirt once. Damn it. Okay. 44, right? It's TX. What? Oh, just TX dirt. $17.76. I guess I should stick to dirt 0. Hmm. Oh. Because the old dirt tile was not dithered, right? So, watch this. Actually, before I do that. Oh yeah, we got some bugs to deal with here. Um And so now the dithering's back in. But it's unable to find the key for a lot of stuff. And that's because a lot of this is commented out. Yeah, we don't have a stone 14. And we're back. But tile type 19. Oh, tile type 20. So it's just like, I think, randoming incorrectly. Um, yeah, it's in the Lua. As you can see, no more errors happening. This is a pretty good looking kind of landscape in my opinion. And this isn't even a fraction of the assets that we're going to be adding in. But the important thing is that everything works as expected. The enemies are just moving randomly at the moment, but at some point we're going to wire stuff in. So I hadn't tested animation sequence incrementing yet, but we can kind of do that now. So 1, 2, 3 4 or 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11. At some point, we're going to need an enemy or a damage as well as a guard. So I'm going to have to update a lot of those numbers. But come on. One of the dogs is taking refuge from the evil vacuum cleaner. Actually, I want to test this in a browser now. Because it's great that it works here, but we've got to double check that it still works in the other place. Oh, we don't need race or entity in the web sources anymore either. All right. Check it out, y'all. We got it in the browser. And in fact, I figured out I can actually self-host the game on my own boxes if I want to. I probably will, because for like a little bit over, maybe close to like $40 a year, I'd be able to self-host this game entirely, let people play for free while I'm developing. I think this would be a fun prospect, right? Like, kind of get people hyped for what I'm doing, because it's really exciting that I can get a C program built and running in the browser, let alone all of the extra stuff that I've got rolling with it. This also runs on mobile. So at some point, we're going to get mobile controls wired up, and I'm going to figure out how to segregate out window presentation, because at the moment, this is really meant for playing in the browser, right? Like, I don't have a real strong way to make it like full screen, but I've set the parameters under the assumption that you're coming at this from a 1920 by 1080 desktop window, right? So let's lay some dudes down. Let's change the look of the dungeon a bit. Bam. I think I'm probably not going to have camera lock on for most of this game. Um, I may enable you to turn it on and off, but I think it'll be off by default until we get into larger environments. One of the next things coming up that I want to get back to implementing is tile lighting, which would be effectively fog of war, essentially. Kind of a combination of like a persistent fog of war, right? Um, the idea being that for the beginning of the game until you get a light source, and actually I'll probably give you one right away so that you can have immediate experience picking up items. Is that if you have torches on you, we would want to have a certain light source of a certain strength coming from your person and light up the tiles around you with certain strength and a certain distance away from you. And we want to do this also in a way where like light can bend kind of around corners, so that like if you have a torch and you put a torch in front of you or something, you'd be able to see ahead a little bit. Very similar to like how nighttime works in Sheeran. That said, it's like 5:13 already. Jesus. And I've been live for almost 3 hours. I did take a pretty significant break there in the middle, but I've gotten a good amount of stuff done today. With all this in, like we're gonna want to start implementing like tiles that are impassable, such as walls. In fact, I think the stone wall is already a tile, right? So like getting back into the dev. Forgot what I was saying. As an example of this, let's take entity move, right? So if the tile is a stone wall, it's going to be impassable, right? See that thing up there? That's a stone wall. So now I can pass it. Here's another stone wall. I can walk around it, but I can't walk through it. But as soon as it goes away, I can move through it now. So the wall structure is going to be very pinnacle to constructing like little buildings and things. A lot of the same level of like primitive function writing that I've done to build up this far, I'm gonna have to do for dungeon generation, right? Um, as an example, you can imagine um, functions that would automatically place square structures that might be consistent of stone tiles, and all that really does is for a given x, y, and a given width and height, um, set the tiles at those locations to be a wall type, right? Um, Something as simple as that could be sufficient. Um, is at some point we'd have to decide on, like, because I want to get back to where my game was at the end of around this time 11 years ago, right? And not only did I have torches working, I had a little bit of combat going, but we also had doors and keys, and there's a lot of stuff like that I want to get working. Sokoban mechanics, tiles and switches, a lot of work. But at 3 hours, you can think, oh, well, there's only 24 hours in a day. So 1/8 of those I've already used working on the game. And 6 of them are going to be used for sleeping. So that's 3/8 right there. So what am I going to do for the other 5/8 of the day? So appreciate y'all joining. A lot of work to be done, but we are doing it one step at a time. I hope you enjoyed the explanations. I hope you enjoy watching my development progress and you look forward to actually getting to play something a little bit more fleshed out. If you enjoy this stuff, do all of this stuff, like, subscribe, share. You know what to do. You've been doing it already for a lot of time, a long time. See, I'm losing steam, so